Hey, welcome to Traffic Keys Media. I am your host, Atiba, and today we're going to be talking about on-page SEO. Now, SEO, there are really three types, okay? There are three types of SEO. The first is on-page, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Then there's technical SEO and off-page SEO. And you really have to master all three of them in order to truly master SEO. Is one more important than the other? No, not really. They're all really, really important. And Google looks at factors from all of them to determine how it ranks web pages. And I want to be clear there. Google is trying to figure out how to rank a page, not your entire site. Okay, so this stuff has to be right. SEO, all three factors of SEO have to be right on every single page, not just your homepage. There are a lot of companies out there that they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to get your site all SEO ready," and they only work on your homepage. They charge you a ton of money, and then they're gone, and they've actually done you a disservice. Okay, because Google's looking at every single page, not just one. So let's jump in and talk about on-page SEO, why it's important, what some of the benefits are, and what the heck is it? Okay, so number one, it's important, as I said, because it's one out of the three major categories of SEO that Google looks at, right? And the obvious benefit there is mastering on-page SEO will help your rankings in Google. Because if you don't have it right, Google definitely won't rank you high. So I want to share with you today seven things to check on every single page on your website for your SEO. Seven things to check. Okay. So number one is your written and your video content. Yeah. So on-page SEO talks a lot about what the user actually experiences, what they read, what they see, what they feel. Heck, someday it might even be what they smell, with the rate computers and things are going. But what do they experience when they come to this page? What's written there? What's the video content there? Right? On-page SEO asks things like, what's the length of the content? Okay. Also, is there congruency? So let's say you have a bunch of written content on a page and also a video. Do they relate to each other? That's what on-page SEO is looking for. If you don't have a video, but you do have a bunch of content, is all of the content related and set up in a hierarchical structure that it makes sense? Right? Are you talking about 15 different topics? So that's one of the very, very first things that Google is going to look at. What is it that you're actually saying? What are you actually saying? Then after that, it starts to consider what are the keywords. So it's looking for keywords, and that's how it figures out what you're saying, because as it's reading through or listening to the video or audio that you have on that page, Google's pulling out certain keywords, and it's trying to figure out, okay, well, if they're talking about this keyword, then I also expect them to be talking about these other topics as well, or using these other keywords as well. And so it's looking to see, are you doing those things? So that's the written and the video content. So that's the first thing that you've got to check. You've got to check your written and video content to make sure that it's congruent with your topic and looking at how much is there. Have you covered the topic well enough, right? If you're writing a super technical thing and you need to say a lot in order to cover it, but you only wrote 400 words, then Google's going to look at it and say, yeah, that's probably not good content. Because Google understands that in order to talk about each topic in the world, roughly how much content do you need to say that? So that's number one. Number two, your title tags. Now, if you don't know what title tags are because you're not into HTML and writing code and all of that, whatever platform you're on, whatever platform your website is hosted on, there is a place where you can define the title tag. Now, the title tag is that when you, let me put it this way, when you search in Google or any search engine and websites come up and then there's a description, right? And that's the link for you to click on. That's your title tag. That's your title tag. It's up in the browser, in the main heading of the browser. That's your title tag. Now, your title tag should say what this page is about. Your title tag should include the keyword that describes what this page is about, right? Your title tag should be something that's attractive to someone on the outside to want to read this page. So title tags like about us, yeah, that's pretty boring. What we do, that's pretty boring, right? You want the title tag to say something that makes the user, the reader, want to read this page. All right, so title tags are super important, including the keyword of the title tag is super important. So that's the second thing to look at. The third thing to look at is your heading tags. So we talked about the title. Now let's talk about the heading tags. Now the heading tags are really, again, getting into HTML. You may have heard of H1s and H2s. Those are heading tags. And just like in an outline in a paper, let's say on Microsoft Word or Google Docs or anything like that, where you can create an outline and a hierarchy, that's what your heading tags do on your website or on your web page, okay? So if you have a H1 heading tag, what you're saying to Google is, this is the most important point on this page. Very often your H1 mimics your title tag, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But you're saying this is the most important point on this page that this page is about. Then if you have an H2, the H2 supports your H1. So let's go back to my point number one when I said the written content, right? And Google is looking for, okay, if you're talking about this topic, I expect you to also talk about these topics. So this is how, one of the ways that Google does it. So Google's going to look at your H1 tag, your heading tag, your top level heading tag and say, okay, if that's your topic, then I expect that you would have subtopics that talk about this, this, and that. And it's going to go look for that. And if it doesn't see that, it's going to question, is your content really valuable? Because I expect this and you didn't give me that. So do you know something I don't? Or is your content just bad? Okay. So the heading tags are super, super, super important and setting up that structure. Now, something I will share with you that I've seen a lot of people do, and I'm hoping that you don't make this mistake. You cannot, let me rephrase. You should not use multiple H1s on a page. The H1 tells Google, this is my main topic this entire page is about. There are caveats and there are exceptions, but by and large, on 95% of the web pages that exist online, there should be only one H1 on a page, only one top level heading on a page, and everything else should either be an H2, an H3, or an H4. Again, we're just nesting them down, nesting your points just like in an outline. Okay, so that's number 3, your heading tags. Number four, your images. Let's talk about images. So you've got images on your page, right, that tell the story, that bring the reader along, that break up some of the text even. Those images have an attribute called the alt text. Now, the alt text is super important for a bunch of different reasons. So number one, it was first created way back in the day, back in the beginning of HTML, back when a lot of web browsers couldn't show images, if you can imagine that, right? So I'm talking the late 90s now, and I remember because we used to hand code. Back then, we used to write HTML code in Notepad, because that's all we had. And you had your images, you'd put an image on a page, and then you had to put it in alt text because there were so many browsers that could not render the image. And because they could not render the image, they would just show a blank space. And so the alt text was then used to replace that blank space with actual text to describe what the image is, right? Now, Clearly, in today's life, in today's society, we don't have that issue anymore. We don't have the situation where there are browsers that can't display images. However, what we do have are people who are, visually impaired, who may not be able to see the screen and using a screen reader. Okay, so for accessibility purposes, the alt text is super, super important. Now, Google looks for that because they want to know that you care about accessibility. That's number one. They also look for it because the alt text tells Google what this image is about. It is a great way to tell Google what's going on in this image, right? So be descriptive in your alt text. The other thing, and this is a little known secret, alt text is a great way to sneak in keywords as well. Sub keywords and related keywords. Great way to sneak in keywords on your page as well. Okay, so alt text is super, super important when looking at images. I'm going to take a quick aside on images right here for a moment and also talk about image size. Image size is very important because if the images are too big, if the file sizes are too large, so I'm not talking about dimensions, I'm talking about file sizes. If the file sizes are too large, then it affects the user experience because it takes a long time to load. Google doesn't like web pages that take a long time to load. So this is an aside because technically it's part of technical SEO, not truly on-page SEO. But since we were talking about images, I wanted to slide that point in there for you too, to make sure you master the size of your images so that your web pages can load quickly. Okay, so that was number 4. Number five. Let's talk about links, specifically your internal links. Yes, internal links. So you've probably heard of backlinks by now, which really gets into off-page SEO. That's what backlinks are all about, the things that are happening off your page. But with on-page SEO, we look at internal links. Here's the deal. When Google reads your web page, it asks itself a question. How important is this page to the entire site? How important do you think as the author of this page that this page is to everything that you're talking about? And how related is it to the other content on this website? So what Google's looking for is how many pages on this website are linking to this page saying that the content on this page is related by keyword and topic, right? Okay. So if, for example, we wrote an article about hair combs, right? The best hair combs on the market right now. Well, if we had other pages that talked about grooming, then those pages should point to the page about hair combs. If we have a page about brushes, then that should point to the page about hair combs. If we have a page about shampoo, that should point to the page about hair combs. And likewise, the page about hair combs can point to all those other pages as well. So in links or internal links, depending on who you're talking to, people use different terms for it, is when your web page links to other pages on your website and other pages on your website link to your web page. When the content on those other pages is congruent with the content that's on your page, then Google says, yeah, this is good stuff. So this is one of the ways, going back to number 1, where we said, okay, you have the written content and what's on this page, and Google's looking for, okay, what's the keyword? And they pull that usually out of the H1 tag, right? And they said, okay, if this is the keyword, then I expect you to also talk about these topics. Well, one of the ways that you don't necessarily have to talk about all of those topics is by linking to other pages that talk about those topics. Google still sees that and says, okay, it's on this same website. This website, it's about this, but this one article was only about this tiny, narrow piece. And Google's good with that. And Google will say, great, We like you. That's awesome. Okay. So it's very important that you master your internal links, right? The best way to master your internal links, and if you've been around me for a while, been listening to Traffic Keys Media for a while, you know, I said there are 3 keys to traffic. Okay. There's knowing your audience, mastering knowing your audience, your content strategy, and then your SEO. You see, in your content strategy, the number 2 point there, in your content strategy, if you master your content strategy, then you'll also understand the hierarchy of your content and what content relates to each other. And when you get to the SEO side, then you understand what content should link to other content. Okay, so that's number 5. That's number 5. Number 6. Number 6 is your page URL. This one is very, 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 very overlooked. A lot of people don't understand it. And honestly, it tinges between on-page and technical SEO, only because most people don't know how to change it, and you need technical help to do it, right? It's not something that you can usually easily do, but your page URL is very important. One, your page URL sets hierarchy because you'll have your domain / something. Now, it could be a folder or it could be the actual page name of where you're going. Okay. If it's your domain / a folder / the page name, great. Google then wants to know what else is in this folder. Getting back to point number 5 about the internal links and the hierarchy. Google says, okay, what else do you have in the folder for grooming? So we had hair combs under grooming. What else is there? So when you link to other things, okay, that's also under grooming. Now it all starts to make sense. So Google's trying to make sense of your hierarchy, and your page URL helps with that. The other thing that the page URL does, if you use it correctly, is your keyword should be in your URL. That helps as well with your rankings, right? Again, everything we're talking about here, and I hope you're hearing this and I hope you're seeing this, is all about congruency. It's all about making sure that all of these elements are congruent and all talk about the same things. Okay, so that's number 6, your page URLs, mastering your page URLs and making sure that, one, they are human readable. I didn't even cover that before, but they've got to be human readable, right? So some of these page URLs with funky characters, no, talk to your developer and get human readable page URLs. Number 2, the hierarchy of the page URL should make sense for the content that you're creating. And then number 3, put your keyword in your page URL. All right, that's number 6. Number 7, and you may argue, is this really on-page SEO? It is. Number 7 is get to know your competition. Get to know your competition. Take your keyword, put it in Google, and go look at the first page of Google. Go look at the first page of Google and read all the articles, all the people who Google is currently ranking on the first page. And when you do that, evaluate them on the first 6 points that I made here to you. Look at their written and video content and its length and its congruency. Look at their title tags. Look at their heading tags. Look at their images. Okay. And they're all text. Look at the internal and external links and the page URL. Look at all of those things. Look at them and say, okay, these people are on page 1, and this is what they did to get on page 1, and then compare it to yourself and see, how can I get better? Are they doing things that are better than me? Are they structured in a different way that may help me? And I'm not saying go copy them. I'm saying go figure out how to be better than them. Okay? How to be better. Because that's the only way you're going to get on page 1. You're not going to get on page 1 because you have a pretty face. You get on page 1 because you create better content than the people who are currently on page 1. And one of the best ways to know how to create better content and have a better on-page experience than the people on page 1 is to go look at what they're doing and figure it out, see what the commonalities are, and see what you can do better and then do it. Okay, guys. So these are 7 things. Seven things. 7 things that you need to do to master your on-page SEO. 7 things to master your on-page SEO. Listen, I know it sounds like a lot, and it can be. It can be a lot. But the thing about it is, after you start doing it, you'll get in a rhythm. Okay, you'll get in a rhythm, and it becomes easier over time. As always, if you've got any questions, drop me a line, hello@traffickeys.com, or leave me a comment down below. Be glad to answer them for you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.